to Go Spill a Tea with myself, Paranormal Mitch.
And Paranormal Tej.
We are joined by our guest today, David Sloan. Hello, David.
Hey, how are you today?
We have
So
been
excited.
so excited for this conversation. We've talked a little bit previously on our the Dead Air podcast, but I think we were so excited to be able to get a little bit more info from you about your backstory, Robert's backstory, and kind of get a really good idea of the true story of kind of what's going on.
Yeah. I'm super stoked.
Super stoked. So we have a couple questions lined up. Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right. So first question I have for you. Can you share a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to really get into the paranormal field?
Yeah, well, my first interest in the paranormal started when I was in kindergarten. I had a kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Uberseter, who used to come in and tell us about the ghost in her house. And it was a Native American spirit. It used to throw her cat down the stairs.
Oh my gosh.
It did all this interesting stuff. And so she'd tell us the stories. So at a very young age, I was hooked. And she told us on the last day of class, I'm going to show you a photo of the ghost. She did. I remember her bringing it in and holding it up. And I looked and I'm like, I'll be damned. I didn't say that when I was in kindergarten, but that was the thought. And after that, I was always fascinated or intrigued by the paranormal. My family had a haunted hotel in Germantown, Pennsylvania. And that was the first time that I actually saw a ghost. I saw the ghost of my great-grandfather in the middle of the day. So I've always been a believer. And I feel some of the things I've discovered more recently, that incident in kindergarten, that's actually what set me on the path towards Robert the Doll.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask, does your kindergarten teacher now know where you are and what you're doing because of her?
I started discovering all these things. My path to Robert the Doll, I've never felt that I was in charge. I always felt that I was showing up and being taken somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was looking for these connections. I kept finding these Pennsylvania German connections. And we know that Robert is German in his ancestry, but the Pennsylvania part, I couldn't figure out why there were so many people that had that connection. And I knew that Gene Otto's grandfather had emigrated from Germany through Pennsylvania. But I started, when I found like 20 or 30 people who played a significant role in Robert's life or me getting to Robert, I said, okay, let's trace this back. And the first one was my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Uberseter. So I called her up and I said, I've got a really weird question for you. I take care of a haunted doll and you play a role in this. I asked her, though, I said, why did you tell us about ghosts? And she said, well, me and my husband lived in a doctor's house. It was an old farmhouse that was supposed to be built on a native burial ground. And she said one of their first nights there, she woke up and there was a symbol on the wall. And it was a circle with a line coming down through it. And she said that she thought the wall was on fire. And she got up and she put her hand by the window, no streetlights. There were no cars outside. So she thought, yeah, the wall's on fire, put her hand up against it. It was cool to the touch. And she had said that when it appeared, the squirrels or something was going crazy behind the walls. She woke her husband up and he said, I see it, but I don't want anything to do with this. And he went back to bed. And then she said the symbol disappeared. And after that, the paranormal activity started happening.
That is bizarre.
And she had never told us about this symbol when I was in kindergarten. So finding this out, that led to an entire new chapter with Robert the Doll.
That's so funny you say that. I think we say all the time that like there are no coincidences.
Yeah.
And we've had this weird thing where like even our stuff is just kind of like weirdly fallen into place.
With like little, effort. It's like if a spirit we're meant to connect with, they will fall in our lap regardless of how they get here. They just end up here, in different ways. So it's fascinating that you've had that experience as well.
Yeah, and I'm learning more and more that nothing's a mistake. I think I think we do have freedom in the way that we operate and decisions we make, but I think a lot of it's predetermined, and there's stuff that's going to put us back on course if we veer too far away.
Yeah. And I feel like we've had this conversation with so many other people where it just feels very similar to where it's like you said, almost like the destination is kind of semi-determined, but how you get there may be, you can obviously decide how that happens, but that's so interesting.
Yeah. My first experience was in kindergarten as well, and it's kind of like when you have that experience at such a young age, it's like your brain is not going to hear otherwise, and like there's just kind of this ongoing journey of like, how did we get here? How did this happen? Why me? Sometimes kind of situation. But it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So that's a fascinating story.
I love it.
Yeah. And when I was on my path, I was in Key West for maybe 20 years when I found out that my great-great-great-grandfather, the first David L. Sloan, he was with the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers. And during the Civil War, his regiment was in charge of Key West during the Civil War.
Of course it was.
See, that's crazy.
They built the fort that Robert the Doll now lives in.
That is wild.
See, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's truly unbelievable. And it's things like this, and that's just one of hundreds of things that leave me with no doubt that this is part of my fate, part of my journey, that that Robert the Doll is something that was supposed to happen from the time I was born, maybe from even past generations.
Yeah, that was set up for you.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. So, I think we've talked a little bit about, how you got into it, but what about like different experiences or things you did in your early career that you think prepared you for what you now do in regards to, taking care of Robert?
When I went to college for hospitality management, and I used to manage hotels. And then when I graduated, I managed cruise ships for about 4 years. So I was always hospitality industry, but that led me to seeing a ghost tour in Scotland when I was traveling Scotland. And ghost tours weren't a thing in the United States. There might have been one or two. There were some that people would do around Halloween, but they weren't in every city like you see today. So on the plane ride over, I was reading a book, Haunted America. And so that really reinvigorated my interest in ghosts. And then I was going to meet my girlfriend's family, and they were in England. We took a train to Scotland. She was looking for a very specific shop, and we're wandering around trying to find it. And I saw a little chalkboard, and it said "Ghost Tour tonight." $10, £10, whatever. And I look at that, and I'm like, "Oh, ghost tour! That's amazing!
Got to do it."
And then, and it was cold, and she said, no, I don't want to go tonight. And I said, okay, tomorrow night. And then the next night, she's like, no, I don't feel like going. No. And then it was actually on St. Patrick's Day, and we were in one of the pubs there. And I said, okay, it's time for the ghost tour. And she's like, no, I don't want to go. I said, all right, I'm going to go by myself. And I left her in the pub, and I went on this ghost tour, and it was the most incredible experience. I mean, the guide was incredible. He dislocated his shoulder, slamming it up against the church door intentionally as part of the story. And they took us into the underground vaults where you go 6 levels below. And so many people died in there during a great fire. And with that, I knew immediately what I wanted to do. And I said, because I looked around, there were probably 30 people on our tour. They were doing 4 tours a night. We ran into 3 other groups doing tours. And I said, okay, these people are making money telling ghost stories. And who doesn't want to make money doing what they love most?
Absolutely.
So I quit my job on the cruise ships, and I moved to Charleston to start a ghost tour. They were one of the that already had one. And I was like, you don't move in on someone else's ghosts. Obviously, people don't think that way anymore. But I was back at my parents in Fort Lauderdale, and my friend Greg Hummel, Pennsylvania German connection, he called my parents' house trying to find out how to get a hold of me on the cruise ships. And my dad says, oh, he's not on the ships. He's right here. And when I talked to Greg, I said, yeah, I had this idea for a ghost tour. I really don't know where to go. And he said, come to Key West. It's the second oldest city in Florida. You can sleep on my kitchen floor.
Nice.
And I was like, great.
Yeah,
So,
right.
You were all in before it was even going. You were all in.
100%. And I packed up my car and went down to Key West, and I slept on his kitchen floor. And I went around, I went to the library, found nothing. Knocked on doors, found nothing. I got to where I was sitting in bars and tipping big dollars, saying, hey, is this the haunted bar? And every single bar, they're like, no, don't know what you're talking about. No, don't know of any ghosts. And I almost left Key West after, 10 days or so of finding nothing. I packed up my car, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I get lost on my way out. And Key West is pretty small. It's pretty difficult to get lost. And so I was so frustrated. And then somebody was sitting in my passenger seat, and they said, go back to the library. And I turned to them and I go, I don't know where the library is. And there's nobody there. I saw their sleeve. It was like almost like a tweed coat. And, but right then I look up and there's a sign that says library parking only.
Yeah, of course
there is.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't there be, right?
That's how
so
it goes.
I pulled over and I parked, and I'd been to the library 2 or 3 times. I went in again. And this time when I was in the Florida history room, there was somebody there. Nobody had been there before. And this guy was the historian. His name's Tom Hambright, Pennsylvania German. And he says, can I help you with anything? I said, yeah, I'm looking for a book on the ghosts of Key West. And he said, oh, there are none. And I said, okay, thanks. And I started to walk out. He stopped me. He goes, wait. No books, but we've got ghosts. And he walks in to this hurricane-proof vault. It's a giant walk-in vault that protects all of our history from fire and all that stuff. And he comes out with this file about that thick, full of newspaper clippings from the past 30 years with all the different haunted houses.
Nice.
And I plotted them out on a map, and I started knocking on doors. One of the first places I visited was the artist house where Robert the Doll lived.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner, he had been there for some time. I had found an article about the ghost of Ann Otto. I hadn't seen anything on Robert. And I told him, I said, hey, I want to talk.
Interesting.
Yeah, Robert was not the celebrity he is now. Daryl Meyer was the owner, Pennsylvania German. And I said, I'm here to talk to you about your ghost. He said, oh, you want to hear about Robert the Doll? I said, no, I'm here for ghosts. I want to hear about Ann Otto.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, no, let me tell you about Robert the Doll.
Let me tell you about this guy.
And at the time, haunted dolls were not something
really
you just see and can look into, really. It's like
they weren't what they are today.
No, not at all.
And I thought he was talking about just like a doll. And I'm like, this weirdo wants to talk to me about dolls. And when he started talking about the haunted doll, I'm like, okay. And I thought he was crazy. And I think anytime somebody talks about a haunted doll, still when I talk about Robert today, a lot of people, their first thought is, okay, this guy's crazy.
Yep.
And I can relate because that's what I thought.
Yeah, I did too.
Totally.
And, so when I'm talking to people about it, it's like, I don't blame you if you think I'm nuts kind of thing, because I would have thought I was nuts.
Yeah. And until you have those things happen. And, Robert wasted no time showing me that he was real. Daryl asked me if I wanted to see the attic room where Robert used to live. And I said, yeah, sure. When he said that, the phone flew off the hook, flew out, bounced back. I looked at Daryl, and he said, yeah, Robert's ready to see you.
Yeah.
And then Daryl starts walking up the stairs. There's a bookcase there. The bookcase opens up so that it kind of blocks me. And when I see that happen, I kind of look at him, and he goes, yeah, he's just messing with you. Come on up.
Mm-hmm.
So we go up the stairs, And at the back of the house, there's this smaller, narrow staircase, and it goes up, and there's a trap door that he opens up. And we get up into this room, and it was still furnished with Robert's little chairs and Robert's little tables.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it was a creepy tea party. And I'm looking around at it, somewhat fascinated as he's telling me the story about Robert. And then when he got to Gene Otto, this energy just changed in the room. I thought I was going to be physically ill if I didn't get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to throw up on this guy's tea party. So I told him, I said, thanks so much for sharing all this with me. Where's Robert now? And he says, oh, he's up at the East Martelli Museum, but he's not on display. So you'll have to call up and arrange to see him. So I leave and I call the museum. It took several tries. The museum didn't want anything. Didn't want to be associated with the paranormal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were a serious art organization, and they thought that paranormal would take away from their credibility.
Yeah. For sure.
So he's kept in the back, but the people there, the staff didn't want to touch him. I had to call a few times before somebody would bring him out. And then I talked to the curator, Stacy Rousseau, and she said, sure, I'll show you Robert. And I went up there, and there's nobody there. It wasn't a museum that many people visited. And so I went in, and she comes out of this back office, and she's holding Robert, and she's almost cradling him like a baby. She's carrying his chair too. He was still sitting in his chair. But she said, hey, Robert, this is David. He's starting something called a ghost tour. And so he wants to take some photographs of you. And I think, this is the second person I've encountered that week who was talking to a doll.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very interesting, the level of respect they were talking to him with. It's like now there's this huge, like, oh my gosh, haunted dolls, so scary. There's like a level of disrespect I see a lot. And it's so interesting that before haunted dolls were even popular, they're already like, hey, Robert, like, can we do that? And they were showing that level of respect early on, which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to realize that Robert wasn't this evil doll at that time. Robert was the enchanted doll.
Mm-hmm.
He was.
That is why I've always been so drawn to Robert, is because I remember reading his story over and over. I mean, I've been reading about Robert the doll since I was in middle school. Okay. And I'm 30 now. Like I researched him so early on, and I was always so fascinated by the inconsistency in his story where, he became evil. And that was the narrative that was told about him. But when you look back in his history doesn't match that narrative. Like he was treated with a lot of respect, and people really, adored him and cared for him. And I had always wondered, until I met you, obviously, I had always wondered, like, where along the line did that happen, and how did that happen? Like, where was the switch? So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And, I think that's something that the legends always tend to talk about humans and what they're going through in their lifetime. The belief in paranormal oftentimes peaks after wars or after plagues. So I think really with YouTube, a lot of people started wanting to get the attention by talking about Robert being evil. Because the algorithms that are set up with social media tend to thrive when there's this negativity involved, when something evokes these emotions. And when people realized, that's why there's people out there getting a lot more hits on their Robert the Doll stuff than me when I talk factually about Robert. Because, I'm not out there saying, he's evil, he's going to kill you.
Right.
And that's the behavior that's rewarded. So that's what was perpetuated. And that's why if people see a photo of Robert now, even on their social media feed, they're typing, I'm sorry, Robert, I don't accept any of this evilness. And
our haunted dolls, because of that whole narrative that started with spirits like Robert, our haunted dolls get, I'm sorry. Like, they think any haunted doll they see now they have to engage in this behavior.
Right.
And I always find it so interesting because I'm like, we don't have any spirits that you can't like, look at or get upset by that. Like, like they actually like being seen, like they like, connecting with people. And so I've always found that very interesting that like, that was kind of like a thing that just started up and carried on. And it kind of started with, Robert and some of these other, haunted dolls and museums. And it has widespread to the point anytime somebody sees any haunted doll, I'm sorry for looking,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And with Robert, enchanted doesn't mean good or bad.
Right.
When you look at the history of enchantment, and if you look at the Black Forest of Germany, where the stuffing inside of Robert the doll was sourced, that's where the elemental spirits were. And I'm pretty convinced there's an elemental spirit within Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole nother conversation, but there's what we label as good and bad, or good and evil, or darkness and light. When you get to this deeper level of things, one can't exist without without the other, and neither one is good or bad. They're both
Right.
necessary part. And I think people who engage with Robert will find that if they choose to step into his forest, he's going to take them on the journey that they're ready for.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And I think something you bring up that's very interesting about the elemental piece, and we talk about this a lot. I'm very interested in elementals, and something it's like good and evil are, subjective human judgments that we place on things to help us as the living understand them. And, when you're dealing with something like an elemental that, doesn't have human emotions and doesn't follow human rules and morals and values, if we don't understand them for who and what they are, we are putting a label that they don't even understand on them. Because they don't follow that, and they shouldn't be expected to because they're not people. When you're dealing with elementals, why should they follow the behavior patterns that we expect as the living?
Right. And I think that's the great thing about paranormal is it does take us on this journey as we try to explore and try to figure things out. Because although I don't know what I suspect some things that are the reasons why we're here and what it is that we're all working towards. But I do think that every human out there is taking a different path towards the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think the exploration of the paranormal is part of that path, because we all know that science is nowhere near to catching up with the human experience and with everything that's out there. So I think that's where the paranormal is so important. And because so much is unknown, part of reaching that ultimate goal is us exploring ourselves and figuring out what makes sense for us.
Yeah. I've thought a lot about just like, in working with our haunted dolls is like how much humans place our own values and our own judgments on things we don't understand just to make it easier for us to comprehend. And, by understanding that and working to remove those barriers that we place on ourselves, like you can experience a lot more. And it's really been a journey in that regard. Because we almost narrow down our lens and our understanding just to help make something unexplainable or something we can't see easier for us.
Which was your first doll? How did it all start with you?
Oh boy, Lana, who's right behind us, this little duck vessel. So how we started was, so I've always been interested in the paranormal. My mom is a professional psychic medium, and so I grew up in ghost life. Like my aunt investigated. I remember using like the OG Ovilus, when it came out, as a little kid. And we boated somewhere that was very haunted, and people saw ghosts walking around that place all the time. There was paranormal activity. Like it was always talked about. And there it was not weird because so many people had experiences. It was just like, oh yeah, that's the ghost on the dock again, And so I had all of these experiences, and, I was was going to cemeteries, like, by myself with a friend when I was 12 years old, just trying to figure stuff out on my own. Albeit with a lack of education of what I was doing, but I was trying, for a 12-year-old. And when I was kind of like in high school and college, I got out of it a little bit. And then I moved into a very haunted apartment after college. And it was this old Victorian house. And it was what I at the time perceived to be a very negative spirit. Looking back on it now, I don't think that spirit was negative. It was a very, very hurt and triggered and scared woman. And she had really bad experiences in her life with men in particular. And so anytime I had a friend that was a guy come over, there was kind of this stuff getting tossed, cabinets opening, stuff slamming, people getting fingers slammed in doors kind of behavior. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to, so I started talking to my apartment ghost, and I'm like, hey, look, like, we can't do this. And I just kind of like reasoned with her, and I would be like, instead of being like, no, don't do this, like being demanding, I learned, if I talk to her and I just like explain to her why I'm asking her what I'm asking her, the activity kind of settles down. And I would say like, hey, like right now, this is a bit loud, but like, could you please be quiet and you can kind of do your thing in the morning when I wake up? And I like learned that kind of that interaction got me somewhere. And so after that, this entire time I had been reading about haunted dolls and, looking into Robert and Annabelle and all these other haunted dolls. I had no idea that you could just like get a haunted doll. I thought it was a situation where like, somebody gives you something or you pick something up from the wrong spot and you end up with a haunted doll and that's the only way to get one. I didn't know you could just like, go and seek this out. So I'm scrolling one day and I'm on my usual haunted doll interest and I see people talking about like places you can get haunted dolls and I'm like, oh my God. And so I tell Mitchell, like, I'm going to buy a haunted doll. And Mitchell looks at me like I'm nuts.
Yeah, I say, no, you're not.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
no,
hell no,
We're not doing that.
And I was like, okay, well, I learned in my research, because he thought the same thing as everybody else. He didn't say it's not real. He thought they're all negative because that is the narrative that floats around online.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, look, I researched like not all of them are, and there are other types of spirits out there, and so. When I strike an interest on something, I fixate and I become obsessed, and I'm just not going to get off of it until I satisfy that interest. And so Mitchell did not have a choice, and he recognized this because he knows me well. And he's like, well, we're going to have to get this haunted doll kind of situation, regardless of, where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Now, very into it. When we started, he's like, Taylor, you're nuts. And so again, I was still skeptical because I had, we had seen a haunted doll at a museum a couple years before that. And, I had seen these things in museums, but not like just in somebody random's house kind of situation. And so I was like, okay, I'm either spending my money on an actual haunted object or I'm spending my money on a really cute stuffed animal, and that's fine too. And we're gonna see what happens. Like, I wasn't even sold on it. I was like, we're just gonna see. And we got Lana and fell in love with her. We had such positive experiences. There was very obvious activity. This house was not haunted before. And after Lana got here, we were having. She's very political. She's got things with politics where she hears something she doesn't like and she'll mute the TV, or, she would want to keep watching something and she'd hit play, or she didn't like something, she'd turn the TV off. And I was like, oh, like we're getting somewhere kind of situation. And I've always been really interested in the communication aspect of things, and we got pretty good communication with her. And, she kind of sent us on this ride of finding who she was and finding her grave and all of this. And we were able to do that. And that made a big difference for her, and that relationship we had together. And it was very rewarding to me because I knew she wanted to find, where she was and what happened to, her and all of these things. And so kind of helping her get that justice, like, just fueled all of it. And then I was, oh, now I want to try working with kid spirits. Now I want to try working with teenagers. Now I want to try working with elementals. Now non-human this, and then it's all.
It got out of hand.
It got out of hand, and that's kind of the road we've been on. Yeah,
well, it's incredible, and it's also in your blood. I mean, it's in your genetic coming down, which I think is amazing. Because I've always admired your ability to communicate with them.
Thank you. Thank you.
When you couple that with the research that you do and the things that you find out, it's all pretty impressive.
Thank you. I was fortunate because my mom is a medium and my entire dad's side of the family, whether they like it or not, and a lot of them don't like it, they see ghosts with their eyeballs. Like it's just that you can see them. Like my dad will walk up to spirits thinking they are living human beings, and he doesn't know any better until they disappear, kind of situation. And he is not into the paranormal. He's like, ah, damn it, I walked up to another ghost today, and he's like, this is so irritating. But it's just kind of I got it on both sides. My mom's side embraced it. My grandma was doing Ouija board at her kitchen table when I was when I was 3 years old, kind of situation. But yeah, definitely. Everybody, some people are super into it. Other people are like, this inconvenience of seeing ghosts is really not fun, but so be it, right? And that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to go on to the next one, my friend?
Sure. So we learned a little bit about how you ended up meeting Robert, which was a really cool story, but there's a big jump between meeting Robert and then being a caretaker for Robert. That's a pretty big
how'd
leap.
that go down?
So like, how did that go down? And then what is like a normal day-to-day look like as a caretaker for Robert?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I call myself a dolltender.
I love that.
Because so Robert's owned by the museum. When Myrtle Reuter left Key West, she said that Robert had locked her in her room. She was Robert's pretty much his second doll tender, because the doll tenders care for the spirits within the doll.
Yeah.
So for me, you have to separate the spirits that are in there from the artifact, because the museum owns the artifact, and that's what they look at him as. They don't much believe in the paranormal. They realize that there's the paranormal side of Robert, and that's the big draw, and that generates the money to take care of this massive fort that they have to maintain.
Yeah.
So they know his practical value, but they're still a museum, and they're not really into the paranormal as a museum. So there's a curator there. She's responsible for Robert as an artifact. My involvement with Robert, when I saw him that first time at the museum, I was taking pictures and he looked like a creepy doll. He's got the little holes in his face where the termites had eaten in.
I think he's so cute.
Just a little sailor suit. He's the size of a small child. But when I went to take his hat off of his head, I saw him come alive. And the energy in the room changed. His eyes, there was somebody inside of him.
Yeah.
And that moment, that's when I realized I'm going to find out what's making this doll tick. And you have to realize that at the time, nobody knew where Robert was from. All we had about him were legends. And the basics of this legend were that the doll was given to the Key West boy by an angry nanny or an angry servant who had been mistreated, and that the doll was given the boy's name. And then, all those crazy things started happening. So that was the legend. And I spent, God, it must have been 10 years. I started the ghost tour, and I started telling people the story of Robert in front of the artist house where he used to live, the Otto home. And I told everybody, go to the museum, call them, ask them to bring him out. And they finally got so annoyed at taking all the phone calls that they said, okay, we'll put him out.
Nice.
And they put him in this little case with Key West characters, where they had the iguana man and the cookie lady, and who were performers in Key West. And the case wasn't even locked. You could have slid it open and given Robert a little pat on the head or shake his hand. But when Robert went on display, people started having problems with their cameras, and different batteries were draining around him, and the staff started noticing more things going on. At the same time, I noticed we had been encountering Robert's spirit at the auto home a lot. When we were on the tour, things were happening in the rooms where he used to be. And then as he went out on display and more people started to going to see him at the museum, his energy made this shift where now it's completely shifted away from the auto home and it's 100% at the museum. So that's part of how I started understanding Robert and becoming acquainted with the spirits. But then I discovered he was a stife. I was spending so much time trying to find out what happened to him or, where he was from. And then one day, and I hired doll experts to try to figure out what he was. Nobody knew.
Yeah, because there was all this talk that he was handmade by the nanny and all of that.
Yeah. And then I saw this stife doll online and I noticed the stitching down the face. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Robert's stitching. And I looked it up and I find this stife company and they were the inventors of the teddy bear. And I found these other dolls that looked almost identical to Robert. And then I started researching their history. I contacted the stife expert in America, Rebecca Kaufman, and then she contacted the stife expert in Germany. And we were able to confirm that, yes, Robert was a stife doll. And the way they identified their dolls was a button in the ear.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at Robert, he was played with. He was an active doll. He wasn't like sitting in a case. So he'd be dragged around by the ear, stuff like that. So his ear had been torn off somewhere along the way. But finding out he was a stife, that was incredible. That was huge in uncovering his story. And it made so much sense because the Ottos were a German family. Jean's grandfather came from Germany. But then the next big break, I saw a photograph of Anne and Jean at their wedding. And I knew everything that was out there. I'd been through every newspaper. I'd been through everything you could find about the Otto family. And so I asked this historian who had that photo, I said, where did you find that? And she said, oh, it's in the Otto boxes in the library vault. And I said,
of course there are boxes of their stuff.
I said, wait. I said, what Otto boxes? And I had talked to Tom Hambright, 20, 30 times researching Otto stuff. And he didn't even recall those boxes being there. And what had happened was Anne Otto was a librarian. This is Jean Otto's wife, the boy who had Robert. So after Jean died, she was a librarian and she took all of their family archives and put them in the library vault, figuring they'd be valuable one day. And they were so valuable. 5 or 6 of these big boxes. I got them out and I started going through. And this included hundreds of letters between family members when Jean and Anne were in France. So by reading these old letters, you pick out little nuggets, and I was able to identify who the angry nanny was. They had a nanny named Emmeline Abbott. And then I was able to find letters about the lawsuit that she had against the family after Jean's father passed away. So that makes her the angry nanny. And then I find out in the census records that she had a child sometime between 1900 and 1910, and that child died by 1910. So having all this information, and then you look at the legends people were telling, and you're able to plug things in. And that's how I was able to identify one of the spirits in Robert the Doll as the child of Emmeline Abbott.
Yeah.
And I call her Abby since we don't know her last name. That's my little Abby right there. Because I invited her spirit into this doll when we did the Fantasy Fest parade together.
Yeah. That was so cool. That was so awesome.
But being able to find out something like that, knowing the Otto family history, you're able to piece together so many of the legends and figure out what was really going on here. And it paints this incredible story, because you look at any haunted doll out there and trying to find the provenance on, you look at Annabelle, nobody knows where she came from. Nobody knows where she was first purchased. Nobody knows any of that. With Robert, we know his true origins. And the more we know about him, the more his story makes sense.
Yeah, that is true. Because like a lot of ours, it was like I know the last, 2-3 people that had them, it was like so-and-so picked them up from a thrift store and had experiences and then sent them to so-and-so and then sent them to so-and-so and then they ended up here. But it's like, what happened before to land them in that thrift store? I can only guess, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, that is amazing. Robert's probably the only one, right? That
Robert's the only one I'm aware of where we know where he was created and can trace his entire life, with significant detail. And, and that's not to say that there's nothing inside of Annabelle. I think Annabelle, but I've got mixed feelings on Annabelle. I don't think Annabelle necessarily started out as haunted. I think there's some questions to be raised there, but I have no doubt that now with the energy placed on that vessel,
like an egregore situation,
that is definitely a haunted doll. I mean, Annabelle's a haunted doll, but I kind of feel that the spirits that are in it now are something that came along later with the energy that people have impressed on it.
Yeah, was drawn to it.
Yeah. I mean, we met her. We didn't investigate her, but we did meet her, and like the energy in that room was so heavy. And like just the sheer amount of human beings walking in that room in the matter of 30 minutes and everybody gawking and being scared and taking the pictures. It's like there's no way to not be, and even if it wasn't like, a human generated type of entity like an egregore, just putting that much energy into one spot would draw any kind of spirit from a million miles away. Like energy draws energy. When they see something like that, it's just like they come for it. Yeah.
Well, and even the environment they put her in. Right?
Yeah.
That's like they're playing like creepy music and it's dim and it's dark and she's up on this pedestal in the back of the room. And you're like, the whole entire situation is set up to achieve a certain emotion.
Right.
Right. And then once again, that you have enough of that emotion, it starts to, I don't know if become reality.
Be attractive.
Right word, but it starts to, other things start to happen because of how much emotion is placed in that direction.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's that interesting intersection between paranormal entertainment and paranormal activity. And
yes.
And I think that, and there's a place for both of them, and there's an intersection between them all too. And I think that's why it's so important for people who are into the paranormal to realize, to know which one it is they're going for, whether it's paranormal entertainment or paranormal encounters to further their understanding of what lies beyond our bags of flesh.
Yeah.
Right. There are a lot of people too that invalidate the paranormal because it doesn't look like the horror movies, and you have to explain, the horror movies are a very glorified version of much, much smaller events. And just because it's not, things whipping across the room and your furniture flying around your house doesn't mean it's not real. It's just, that's the Hollywood version. But I've definitely seen in this and been surprised by how many people do believe that those horror movies are the real way that, ghosts work. That has surprised me time and time again. I've always been shocked. I'm like, sometimes I'm surprised that I have to explain that it's dramatized, but it's, if you don't have paranormal experience, how would you know? Right.
Yeah. And it's, there's definitely the division. Not to say that real life can't be like a movie sometimes.
For sure. That's for sure. But yeah,
for sure. For people who have not heard as much about Robert, don't know as much about Robert, how would you kind of describe who he is? I know you've touched quite a bit on his past, but tell us a little bit about sort of your experiences with him most recently and kind of what you would describe, his personality and him as.
People say he's the world's most haunted doll. I'd say he's the world's most misunderstood doll.
Sure.
Because there are many levels to Robert. And the biggest thing for me to understanding him was realizing that he is not a single entity. For the longest time, I thought Robert the doll, it's one entity. And then when I identified the child spirit, I thought, this is it. This is great. And after I identified the child spirit through all that treasure trove in the library, that's when I wrote the book about Robert the doll. And I thought Robert would be so happy to finally, to have people know that he was a little girl. And I went through one of the worst times of my life then, where something in that doll did not want the book written. And I did not understand why. And I didn't understand why I started going under attack. And the only way that I was able to make sense of it was when I realized there were multiple entities in Robert, and some of them were not interested in Robert being an innocent doll. There were these other forces. And so I became aware of at least 3 forces. There was the little girl spirit, and then there were 2 other ones, which were darker spirits, but they were more protectors of the little girl.
Yeah, those guardian spirits.
Yeah. And they were what most people might consider negative, but really it's when people came up to the doll and would stick their tongue out or flip the doll off. They don't realize that they're disrespecting the little girl, and these other entities latch onto them and follow them home and make their lives hell.
Yeah.
Right.
Till they apologize to the little girl. So by apologizing to Robert, they're apologizing to the child that they disrespected. And that's what this whole thing goes about. It's not like Robert's actively cursing people. It's that people who approach anything in life and disrespect it have to face the consequences. So this is more, these entities are more delivering the morals of the story in these people's journey.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting because Discovery Channel, HBO, did a shock doc on Robert the doll. And they brought Cindy Kaza down, and she was very intuitive about the different things inside of the artist house. She knew things that only someone who had spent 1,000 hours in the library would know. And she picked up on multiple entities in Robert, as I had, but she said, oh, there's a portal in him, and it's an unlimited number of spirits.
Yeah.
And when she said that, it very much resonated. And I'm like, aha. Yeah, that clicks. And so that made sense of a lot more, and why there can be dozens of people at the same time saying that something's happened with Robert and that he's that they're suffering from that. But I think it's also important to point out a lot of people have good luck with Robert.
Yeah. And nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
No. Most of Robert's fan mail now is positive. Nobody talks about that either. He gets cards and letters of people saying, I love you, Robert. You're my best friend, Robert. So there's a lot of that going on. I have people who come out on the tours, and afterwards they say, I got a weird question for you. Does Robert ever bring good luck to people?
Yeah.
I'll say, oh, yeah, it happens more than you'd think. And they say, yeah, because after I visited him, nothing strange happened, but I've been having really good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, children with autism especially notice Robert. They might expect to be afraid or be told to be afraid, but they'll walk in, and as soon as they see Robert, their faces will light up and they'll say, Robert's not mean. And they're like, I love you, Robert.
Yeah.
And so they see that child spirit side of Robert. They see the good that is there. So, I think Robert is a mirror very much in that way, where people do get whatever it is they're looking for.
And I find that so fascinating, because that is a very similar situation that we have with one of our spirits, Amika, who's an elemental spirit, but she is kind of like an elemental guardian type spirit. And people, it's one or the other. Amika is either your best friend on this earth and she will do anything for you, or it's the opposite. It's, oh, you disrespected so-and-so and now I'm going to wreak havoc. And she will, she definitely will. I got to be careful about candles and things of that nature, because we've had incidents. But
oh, yeah.
We've had incidents, for lack of better terms. But, those guardian type spirits, again, going back to like, they don't follow human morals or values. For me, in my experience, it's been like they are more exchange oriented than human beings are. So it's kind of like this, you pat me on the back, I pat you on the back. Or the flip side, you piss me off and now I'm going to piss you off back. And it's just, they do mirror behavior in that way because they understand, like Amika understands an exchange. She doesn't understand a small talk or let's talk about your feelings. Like she just sees, actions. You did this, I do this. You do this, I do this. And she kind of just operates on this, the next thing that matches your action. And so I love that you brought that up because I think that's really important. And it's something that we should be thinking about with all spirits, is like the energy you bring can dictate your experience. And when you're running around screaming and yelling and flipping them off and, demon plot line, like you're probably going to have the bad experience you're seeking because you're dishing that out to that spirit who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah. And I saw that. It was interesting when Sam and Colby came to see Robert the first time, they decided to challenge Robert. And then after that, Colby had some problems. He had cancer in his testicle. And, people were saying, oh, that's Robert. And, you could look at it either way. But when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, absolutely Robert. Because right when I was writing the book and having all those problems, I went with a psychic up to the museum to try to communicate with Robert and to find out what I was doing wrong. And when we were in there, it felt like somebody took a knife and jabbed it into my groin on the left side. And I thought I was going to die. I had to go outside and sit down.
Wow. And
then the psychic told me, she said, Robert says that he's trying to give you cancer. And so this was one of the darker entities within there, or one of the other entities through this portal, I believe. But so when I heard that about Colby, I was like, oh, yeah, without doubt. And they came back for him to apologize. And they went into the room and he came out in a minute. He said, there's a bat in there. And I said, we don't get bats at the fort. And he said, no, there's a bat. Come see it. We walked into the room and I look up right above Robert's case, hanging from the light is a black witch moth. And these are very rare. And in different cultures, they're a sign of a curse or the delivery of death. And when I looked up, Robert has this great control over animals, as many elementals do.
Yeah, Amika does bats, funny enough.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's bats. That is so bizarre. I cannot believe you just said that.
I looked up at the black witch moth and I said, Robert, if that's you, I want you to land on whoever the curse is for. And as soon as I said that, the black witch moth dropped and started flying around the room. And, Colby covered himself up with his hoodie. He ducked underneath and, shooing it away because we all knew who it was going to land on. But he made his apology and he was very sincere with it. And I believe that all of his problems have gone away since then, which is what I see happening time and time again. If somebody is disrespectful and they own up to it and they're sincere, it seems that whatever entities are hovering over them disappear.
Yeah, that accountability makes a big difference.
Big time.
Yeah, I always say with spirits, it's both action and intent, right? It's like your intention matters and they do see that intention. And so if you're just saying something to say something and you don't mean it, they're going to see right through it.
Yeah, yeah, they do 100%.
Yeah,
for sure.
That is fascinating. Yeah, the bat thing is very weird. Like you had me stunned when you said that because we've dealt with that with bats with her and mice too. Funny enough.
Yes. And you'll start noticing a lot of different animals when you start watching their behavior out in nature or their behavior when they're closer to your dolls who are controlling this. You can notice the differences between it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, we even have one of our spirits that's very closely tied to spiders. Or
when you greet the spider, you turn around and you turn back and the spider's gone. That's how I know if it's her or just a regular spider. I had to start taking pictures of them because I couldn't tell what was a real spider and what was a fake spider. And it was so bizarre. Like if I say, hi, thank you, because I couldn't figure out why she was doing it. So I just started saying thank you. And then we find out later, we were like, what are those for? And on the spirit box, she's like, gift. And I'm like, oh, thank you. You know, like to her, like to an elemental spirit, like that's like the ultimate sign of love is like, I'm going to give you spiders, I guess. But I would say, hi, like, thank you, Athena. Like, I see that. And then I turn around and I turn back and the spider's gone.
Yeah. Robert delivers snakes.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes like just baby snakes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are so many pieces to him you never hear about, you know?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more. You mentioned earlier about this idea of Robert having multiple entities attached to him.
How'd you get there?
Yeah. And then what's kind of developed over that time? Because that's kind of, you know, like you said, that's a big shift from like probably a previous thought that you had about him. What's kind of developed over time from that?
Well, when I look at it now and realizing that there was the earth elemental as the original spirit, to me, that completed the story where I realized, okay, now 100% makes sense. And it's funny because that brought it all back to the enchanted doll, which is what they called him before everybody came along. And
the answer was right there.
It was right there.
Yeah, it was right in our faces. But so the way that I see it is you have this original magic that was built into the doll before he came over. And I think that's what intrigued the little boy. I think the little boy was drawn to that magic. I think the little girl who, the daughter of Emmeline Abbott, who was growing up in the same house, you know, and they would have spent a lot of time together. I think she saw that magic within that doll too. So when she passed away, you know, Jean's father was a doctor. So the nanny would have gone, she would have taken her kid to the house when her kid was sick or injured, whatever happened. So I think that child was drawn to that magic of Robert and became part of the doll at that point. So now we've got two entities within there and the little boy who sees the magic and never stops seeing the magic. And then I think that was most of what it was for a long time. I think with the doll going on display in the museum, that brought in the other spirits who were working as protectors. And those might be part of the elemental. I don't really know. You know, to understand Robert, there's an elemental spirit in German folklore called a kobold. It's like a K-O-B-O-L-D.
Yeah.
And the characteristics are very similar. Pretty much everything matches up with Robert's personality. So if you look at those, you can understand a lot about him. But then I think those protectors came out when the little girl was at the museum alone. And then maybe I think the portal would have opened up just because there were so many spirits with this interest in helping the little girl and being around the energy of the elemental. And then I think, you know, you look at any pilgrimage for the paranormal, houses don't quite have that appeal that something that looks human does. So I think the energy is very strong within the fort. And I think that draws so many people there with a certain type of energy that I think that's like, my guess is that in the spirit world, you know, it's like they can go somewhere else and grab some cheap ramen noodles and then here they're getting like the lobster. And so they all want to go and have the fine dining.
Sure.
And that's how I see it with Robert. And that's just, you know, I've spent 30 years with Robert right now, really trying to understand. And that doesn't mean I always get it right, but I feel like I understand Robert probably better than any other human out there. And so when I say these things, that's, you know, it's my opinion, but that's what I believe to be true.
Yeah. And the intersection between folklore and the paranormal is like, it comes up again, you know, like there are so many things in folklore that if you really dig, like you did, you know, with the Cabal, it's like, there are so many things in folklore that match up very perfectly to the experiences people have in the paranormal. And I don't think enough people look into that because it's like there's intersection after intersection after intersection. And there is, to me, has to be something to that.
I'm convinced that there is.
Yeah.
And you look at, we call them fairy tales, but for the people who were living around the elementals in the Black Forest, fairies were very real. And then, as time went on, I bet more people started telling these stories about fairies because they wanted the attention that came with talking about them. And that's when they became tales along the way. So I don't think a ghost story is any different. Like, we'll tell ghost stories and they're very sincere and they're very real. But I suspect there'll be a time when people categorize ghost stories as they do fairy tales, when in fact both are very much rooted in a certain reality.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that.
So you've done so much learning about his past and what kind of Robert does now. What do you think you still want to figure out? What's the unknown that's still out there for Robert? Because I feel like sometimes even with our spirits, we almost like the more answers we get, the more questions that we get. And it's like we learn all these things, like, wow, we learned all these things, but like it totally shifts. Okay, now we have a new thing we need to figure out. What's like your next goal? What's your next thing you want to accomplish with Robert?
So for everything with the elemental is so recent, within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And so I took the trip over to Germany to explore a lot of this stuff. And I feel like that was such a huge part that I don't really know what's next. What I imagine will be that the whole symbol that I talked about with my kindergarten teacher, when I went to look that up, the first thing that came up for me was the Irminsul, which is a tree that was worshipped by the pagans. And a lot of the pagans had the tree worship. I don't think there was one Irminsul. I think there were many trees that were sacred to them, which is interesting with the elementals and with Robert being stuffed with wood from the Black Forest. But when the Holy Roman Empire was starting, Charlemagne came through and, he cut down the Irminsul and built a church out of it. The first ruler of the Holy Roman Empire was Otto the Great. And if you look through Jean Otto's family history, which his sister compiled, she went to great lengths to point out that they were directly descended from Otto the Great, who was the first ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. So what I'm trying to make sense of now, you have a certain type of worship that was taken down by Christianity. Chopping down the trees, kind of changing things. Christianity adopted a lot of the practices of the pagans. But I think the pagans, it was more of an elemental worship. And so I had thought that that's the thing that's been going on for a long time. Just the other day, it dawned on me that what if this elemental spirit wasn't delivered to Robert to deliver some type of penance, some type of generational penance for chopping down the original.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I think about that yet, because I don't like to jump to any conclusions, but I was thinking that they were combined and it was all good. But just the other day, I'm like, maybe this is placed on the family. My 40th great grandfather is Charlemagne. That's how I got interested in family history when my dad told me that. And it's not like some royal thing, there's probably 1,000 people watching this who can trace their history back. You go back 40 great grandfathers and you're related to a lot of people. But, that close connection between Charlemagne and Otto the Great, it's another one of those things where I think, okay, maybe that's why I'm wrapped up in all of this. And again, I don't know the purpose. So that's what I'm exploring. And I think the future is going to be very interesting as it unfolds. So I'm curious to be there and watch, because I feel like I have a much better grasp on things. I've been through hell with Robert on multiple occasions, and I do come under attack with different spirits, and it's consumed a lot of my life. But I feel really good about where I am with it now, and I'm always anxious to see what unfolds. And I think it'll be real interesting when you both bring your energy here.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, super excited.
Yeah.
What do you feel like your relationship is with Robert now?
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. I went through some interesting times last year. I was having all types of brain issues the doctors couldn't figure out. And I ran into the Santeria people who had helped me when I first had problems with Robert the doll.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things as well where, I was forced by the universe to run into them. The chances of it were so slim. And they identified an attachment with me because when I was studying all the German magic, and when they called down their spirits, it was fascinating because their voices changed and their appearance changed. And the first thing that this spirit did was put her hand on my head and said, "You're having problems with your brain and the doctors can't figure it out. They're not going to figure it out because your brain is fine. It's the spirits."
Wow.
And then she told me that I get up early in the morning and was reading about the spirits and that I'm opening doors and not closing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that I had hundreds of doors open. Nobody except my wife knew that I was getting up at 4 a.m. and reading the books on the Hermetic Order and on alchemy and all of these different things. They did this cleansing where they closed all the doors that were open and removed the spirits, and then gave me a ritual for cleansing my house. The next day I woke up and my brain was back to normal.
Wow.
Crazy.
So I don't even know how we started talking about that, but that's so there's a lot of power in there, and I feel like that I had an opportunity then to ask questions, and I asked her, I said, how am I with the spirits and with Robert? And she said, "Oh, there are hundreds of them, and they all love you." And that's what I felt.
That is awesome.
I've felt that I'm very good with those spirits now because we've been through a lot together. We've been through that journey through the forest where it can be terrifying. But with all of those heroes' journeys, if you make it through the forest, you come out the other side better.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've come out of the forest.
Yeah, I think balance and respect is something that has been mentioned multiple times here, but we talk about all the time. Is that things will work out where they need to.
Yeah.
Right. And that's even for us, like periods we've had hard times in our life, and then we've happened to find a spirit that like is perfect for that situation.
Yeah.
Or we find spirits that we're really drawn to. Or Taylor and I laugh because there are some spirits that like she really connects with that I enjoy being around, but I don't connect as heavily as she does. And there are spirits that I am really heavily attached to that she is, enjoys quite a bit, but is not as attached to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just fascinating how the things kind of
you just get picked,
You just get picked, and like it just kind of melds together and creates this unique thing that changes so much, but I think can create such positivity for the spirits, but also for us.
I do have to ask this too, is, when you were having all of those physical experiences and reactions and all of that, like a lot of people would have said, like, I'm out, right? Like what motivated you to keep going on this journey despite all of, the chaos and things along the way?
I took breaks.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I took breaks several times. The first time that I started having problems, I got rid of so much stuff in my house, like anything that had any connection to anything haunted, I got rid of. And I had to convince myself that there was no such thing as ghosts.
Wow.
So there was a time when I was just like, no, there's no such thing. And to keep my sanity, I had to convince myself that. But then, so there were times in my life where I didn't believe in ghosts, but I could not explain hundreds of things that had happened to me.
Right.
I think not being able to explain them and looking back on them and knowing they were paranormal, it kept that inside where I knew. So I've always gravitated back towards it. And again, I don't think that was my choice. I think it was because there was more of Robert that needed to be told. And I do feel like most of that story is out now. with the Robert the Doll book, when I wrote it, that's mainly the history and clearing those things up. The way it is now, there's like 3 more volumes to write to really explain Robert's full story.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm at a point where that'll happen over the next couple of years or over time. And I think that's ultimately the thing, is to have something out there that lets people know, 100 years from now, that no, this isn't an evil doll. This is an enchanted doll.
I love that you say that. It's like my new favorite quote.
Yeah. We might have to borrow that.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting. One of the things that it made me realize, knowing that the connection goes back to kindergarten or before, knowing that I've been led here the whole way, finding my great-great-great-grandfather's connection, all of this has let me know that I'm not alone in the world. All this stuff that I've been doing, I've been guided the entire time, and I don't understand the entire force that's guiding me, but it's made me know without doubt I am not alone in anything I do. I could be sitting alone in a room, but I've got an army of dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands that are with me, and they're protecting me, and they're steering me, and they're guiding me. And that's a pretty amazing thing to realize, even if it took me as long as it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when it feels like things are falling apart, somebody still has the reins, and it's happening for a reason. You just don't find out until later, and some bumps in the road,
Yes. Yeah. And if you ride it out, finding these things out is incredible.
Yeah.
The one thing that was really cool for me. So we did a ceremony where I invited the elemental spirit into a doll that I created to take back to Germany and release into the Black Forest. And I told it, I said, I don't know how this all works, but if you need help getting back there, you can come into this doll and I'll take you there. And I went out, and it was midnight on my birthday, and I went deep into the Black Forest, and I had this spot where I let it go. And the Black Forest is called that because it's so dark, so thick and dark. And it was a full moon out almost, and but you couldn't see a thing. So I had flashlights, headlamps. After I released this thing, or think that I released it, I started walking back out. After about 5 minutes, I realized I didn't have any of my lights on, and I could see just fine. And I started opening and closing my eyes to kind of see. I couldn't tell if they were open or closed, and I could see everything around me perfectly. And I walked out of the forest, and I overshot where I would have gone back down to my Airbnb. And then up ahead, after I got out of the forest, there was this field that was almost glowing blue. It was like wheat. And I thought, that's just beautiful. I'm going to lay down in that. And I went and I laid down in it, and I looked up, and the moon was almost full. And then this white streak appears in the sky, and it shot across the moon, and it connected it, and it made that symbol that my kindergarten teacher had described.
My gosh. Of course it did.
Yeah. And it was, it was an airplane leaving a trail, but that was the only thing in the sky. And for it to connect and make that symbol, that's when it connected to me. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know what it means, but I'm like, I'm on the right track.
You're doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Boy, I think we've reached.
What a journey.
Yeah, this is incredible. I just love talking about this stuff. I think it's so fascinating, and I think every person we talk to has such amazing experiences, and it's so interesting hearing. There's just so much to it. I feel like every time we talk to new people, there's more I want to learn about.
Yeah. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you for coming on and teaching us all things Robert the Doll, and clearing up, a lot of the misconceptions and misunderstandings that are out there. Like there's a glorified Robert story and there's the real Robert story. And I love that you always stick with the educational and the real and the true and what matters. And yeah, I respect the heck out of you. So thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, I feel the same way about both of you, and I really appreciate you giving the time to ask the right questions about Robert so that people can know what the truth is. And I think Robert's going to be very happy to see you, meet you.
Well,
I cannot wait.
We are tremendously excited. We've been talking about it for weeks about how excited we are, and it's awesome.
We have one more question we have to ask David. So, Isabel, who's coming with us on the trip, this is hilarious. So, periodically we'll say, "Oh, do you have any questions for the guest on the topic?" And so we ask Isabel, who, as you know, is a sassy teenager, and we're bringing her down, and she's our vessel hopping friend. And we said, "Do you have any questions for David about Robert?" Thinking it was going to be some beautiful. Isabel would like to know if Robert has ever been given French fries before, and I was supposed to ask you that. So.
Not that I'm aware of. No, because mostly what people bring him are the peppermint candies.
Oh,
and that's another legend about Robert. I think people just figured it was an old-fashioned candy. The museum, of course, discourages food because it brings in rats and bugs and all that stuff. But no, and he might enjoy French fries. So maybe
we bring him French fries.
Maybe when you visit, we should bring some French fries in, and we'll help him eat them and kind of get a feel for what he has to say.
Okay,
let's hook it up. Let's hook it up.
Let's figure it out. I love it. Oh, that's so
all right. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you. I cannot wait to meet you in person, and to meet Robert as well. And we will be chatting with you soon.
Very soon.
We're so excited too.
Yes, super excited.
Yes.
We'll save some Key West warmth for you.
Oh,
listen,
we
need it.
Cannot wait.
I'm
so sick of the snow and the ice and the cold. This is gonna be great.
I am over the cold at this point, and I like the winter too. So that's really saying something. So Florida,
Robert here will melt it all away.
Perfect.
Nice. All right. Well, we are going to say goodbye to David. We are going to have our commercial break, so hang tight for that. And we will chat with Isabel when we come back.
Yes.
See you soon.
I was built to last with the webs I'm weaving. I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on the gas, never stop competing. If you break my glass, then this life's gonna
I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy, think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me, I know most are festering. Negativity is a plague for the mentally weak. No mercy, all I got is working. Never stop searching, never quite so thirsty. I'm toxic and psychotic, with this logic you can't stop it. It's been chronic since I was a boy, so neurotic and chaotic.
built to last with the webs I'm weaving. I could change the past with all I'm achieving. Got my foot on gas, never stop competing. If you break like glass, then this life's gonna eat 'em. Make mistakes real fast, then you learn how to beat 'em. If you take off the cast, you can see all the healing. If the pain's in the past, move on from the grave and put your foot on the gas.
Hello and welcome back from our commercial break. We are here with our spirit of the week.
It's Isabel.
It is Isabel. We picked Isabel for a pretty specific reason this week.
Yes, we did. So we picked Isabel to be our spirit of the week this week because the first time we went on a podcast on Dead Air, which you just saw a commercial for, that was literally tied to her wrist. Okay. Anyway.
Here you go, girly.
I'm going to put that over there.
Okay.
So we're going to put that over there. Keep going. So when we went on Dead Air with David the first time, at the end of the episode, George and Ken asked David, like, look in that room, this room, and like, who are you like the most drawn to? And, you know, just pick somebody. And he looked and he narrowed in on Isabel right away.
Mm-hmm.
And what was very interesting about that to me is during that episode, we had been talking at length about Robert and, you know, vessel hopping and how, he leaves his vessel, he's gone into other vessels, and all of this vessel hopping behavior that David explained to us again today a little bit. And I found it so interesting because that is not like a super typical behavior. You don't see that a lot of spirits are very attached to their vessel. And we had this whole conversation. And at that time, that behavior of Isabel's was not, Isabel was relatively new at the time. That behavior of Isabel's was never put on my public social media platforms. Her story was not out. He had no way to know that. And he zoned in on the one spirit in our house that has a very similar quality to Robert in that sense. She's a teenage girl doing this. She does it for very different reasons, but I found it fascinating. And so we were talking, and after the podcast, and he was like, we should try some things and just see. And so that was kind of what set this ball in motion. And so Isabel thinks she's very important because she got picked for that, which is really cool. So Isabel will also be going and meeting Robert here very soon, which is very cool. Isabel is very unique. She was originally haunting a house. This homeowner had called and said, like, called into an investigation team and said, like, I have a really bad haunting going on. The spirit is out of control. Stuff's getting thrown. Stuff's getting knocked over. Stuff's getting broken. What in the world do I do? And they went in there and they discovered, they thought this was multiple spirits doing all this. They find out it's just like this like sassy teenage girl. And they're like, really? So, bargaining with Isabel is an art. She is very, I don't even know how to describe her. It's like she has this dry kind of sense of humor, but you also never really know what she's thinking because she does it with this flat affect. And so they bargained with her a little, and they actually were able to talk with her about leaving the property, and she was okay with doing that. But she wanted a very specific vessel, and she couldn't make up her mind. So they had to bring in multiple vessels multiple times for her to decide which one was
best
worthy.
Yeah.
And so she did end up leaving the property. She did end up choosing a vessel. This was not that vessel. Before she came here, she had broken several different vessels leading up to this. And this one, she wanted an American teenage vessel. And so that is how she ended up with this current vessel. And so Isabel is sassy. She is super, super funny, and we really enjoy working with her. We've had some very interesting experiences with her. We don't really, prior to Isabel, we really didn't have, we had door activity things, open, close, etc. But we didn't really have like throwing large things, knocking stuff over to that degree. We had one-off experiences with very small things getting knocked down, but Isabel in her first week here knocked over a large vase with a plant in it. She has knocked down like a big, I don't even think this was knocked down, this was more like slammed, like a big speaker for a record player. She loves to read, she loves books, and so she periodically meddles with the items on Mitchell's bookshelf, and we have to clean that up every once in a while. And so she just has really, really unique activity. I've really enjoyed getting to know her. She always keeps me on my toes. I never really know what she's thinking. But most of it does come from kind of this place of like humor and trying to get a reaction and trying to see what you'll do about it. And she kind of likes the thrill of the chase, so to speak.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Cool. So, as a reminder of how we do this, we ask Isabel these questions that were submitted by you guys, our audience and viewers. I write down her answers word for word. Try and have them to be as close to what she wants to say as possible. So,
yeah.
During our Spirit Box session, I asked Isabel, I said, hey, are you ready to be Spirit of the Week? You ready for your interview? She said, do it. Okay. First question we have is from Emerald, who was on our podcast. They ask, of all the time periods you've been in, which was your favorite and why? And Isabel said, I think the 70s. Good music, good books.
Isabel is from the 1920s or 30s, somewhere in that range. But she has been around as a spirit since she passed in her teenage years, around 16.
So she's read a lot of books.
Yes, she's very well read, and she's always trying to learn more, which is really cool.
Yes. Next question is also from Emerald. They ask, what is your favorite thing about this time period? And Isabel said, fast food. All of it.
She is on this thing about how we have to get her McDonald's French fries at the airport because apparently, according to her, we don't eat McDonald's, but apparently, according to her, somebody told her at some point along the line, she learned from somebody, probably previous spirit keeper, that the French fries at McDonald's are better at the airport.
Yes.
Than at a regular McDonald's.
They are different at the airport.
They're different, and it has to be at the airport. So at the airport, we have to get her French fries. And she also had to know if Robert has ever had French fries. It was very important.
Needless to say, she's a fan of French fries.
Yes.
Can't blame her. Okay. Next question is also from Emerald. Is there anything you'd like to study about that isn't currently advisable in the house for you to study? And Isabel said, yeah, I like learning about space advancement.
We did not know she was
We did not know she was into space. And it was funny. I talked to her about it, and I was like, I don't have a book on space, but I have a book on astrophysics. She was like, Mitchell, not space enough.
Not space enough.
And then she was like, I've read it. And I was like, oh, okay. More space. Okay.
Yeah, we this interview with her was very interesting, this spirit box session, because she gave us more straight answers than we usually get.
Yes, normally it's like we have to more figure it out what's going on.
Yeah, and there's, some beating around the bush and not being super clear. And so it was nice to learn more about her in this setting. Because sometimes when we do like spirit of the week sessions, it's like they know people are going to be watching, and sometimes we hear more. So that was cool to learn about her.
There you go.
Space books incoming.
Space book and French fries.
We got that.
Last question from Emerald. They ask, when is your birthday? Isabel had an interesting answer. She said, birthday means I get older. I don't have this anymore because I am dead now. Okay.
This is what I mean by dry.
What do you mean by dry?
She said that totally flat.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like
no sarcasm, no nothing. Just that's how it is. Okay, fair enough. Next question is from Caitlin with the Z. Hi, Isabel. Hope you are doing well. I was wondering, what is your favorite book to read and why? And Isabel said, Romeo and Juliet, the classics. There you go.
All right.
Can't go wrong. This is also when I asked her, I was like, hey, have you ever heard of Nomeo and Juliet? She's like, what is this? And I was like, it's Romeo and Juliet, but it's a movie where they're gnomes. And she goes, not classic. I was like, okay. She's like, not fun. Fair enough.
No, Nomeo.
Can't beat Shakespeare.
Don't tell
about Nomeo and Juliet.
Gnomes in CL's house. He hates gnomes.
It was just a thing about a movie. I want to see what she knew about it.
He got mad at me over putting a plastic gnome on the lawn for a Halloween decoration.
It's true.
No Nomeos.
Next question is from Caitlin. What is your dream vessel that you might want next? And Isabel said, maybe. Can look like a modern girl. We'll see. She'll figure it out.
We're going modern next, apparently.
And modern next is going to be the move.
Yeah, she's been here. Apparently, she's had this specific vessel for a couple of years. And
she's
so
getting long for her.
Yeah, her original team said that she was kind of like getting due for a vessel, but she'll know when she wants one because she'll just completely trash the old one. So
yes,
like shatter on the floor kind of situation.
Well, we get into that.
Yeah.
Next question is also from Caitlin. What has been your most favorite vessel that you've had so far? And Isabel said, I had expensive orange hair doll before. Okay.
All right.
And I said, what makes you want to change your vessel? And she said, IDK. Or I'm sorry, I wrote IDK. She said, I don't know. Different reasons.
Like, I don't think
sometimes dirty, sometimes bored, sometimes funny. I don't know. Hey, it's whatever the vibe is.
So just for sport.
Just for vibes.
Just for sport.
Next question is from Caitlin. Do you have a favorite book series? If so, what is it? Isabel said, similar to what she said earlier, I love Shakespeare, the classics. Your Hamlets, your Othellos, your Shakespeare's, all that good stuff.
I don't know anything about
I was going to say, you've read all those, right, Taylor?
I've read a whole zero. And when I was assigned to an English
I
class
was
in
gonna say,
high school,
not
what did
even
I
like
do?
an English class?
No, I never read those.
Really? I read Shakespeare.
Well,
I read Hamlet. I read Romeo and Juliet. I think I read
Well, I don't
think I read
listen.
Othello.
I don't listen.
Of course you don't listen. Well, maybe now you need to understand Isabel better.
Yeah, I mean, my high school English teacher said we're reading Romeo and Juliet. And what did I do? I did not read Romeo
watch a
and
movie.
Juliet. I didn't even do that.
Oh my God. You couldn't even take the easy route and watch the movie.
I didn't even bring a backpack to class sometimes. You're lucky if I got a backpack and a pencil.
Yeah,
I mean,
you were a bad student. You were a bad kid. Next question's from Caitlin. Do you like jump scaring others around you for fun? For example, like when you dropped all the cutlery onto the floor and made a loud noise. She said, yeah, some people do funny things to that. You like it, Mitchell? And I said, no, I don't like being
sounds
scared.
like a challenge.
I know. She said, that's right. Speaker, remember? Bookshelf, thousands, too bad. And I was like, oh yeah. And then she said, I learned a word for that from Taylor.
Oh no. Every time I teach them something, it's something bad.
And then she said, for a plot. It means funny, I think.
For the plot?
Wait. And I said, do you mean for the plot? She was like, oh, the. And I was like, for the plot. She said, that will do it. And then I looked up a definition and I said, it was like, oh, something you do regardless of the negative consequences because you're the main character and you want to do it because it's funny. She said, that'll do it.
Okay.
You do it for the plot.
For the plot, girl.
No, do it for a plot.
Do it for a plot, girl.
There you go. Next question is from Caitlin. What is your favorite piece of paranormal equipment and why? And Isabel said, a talking box. The talking box. There you go. She likes the spirit box.
I've never heard one of them call it a talking box
Yeah.
before. That's a first.
Technology
I
girl.
kind of like that.
Talking
Actually makes
box.
more sense.
Yeah.
It is a talking
It is a
box.
talking box.
Technically, I mean that's exactly what it is. It's a talking box.
Agree. Next question is also from Caitlin. If you could be any character for a day from a book you've read before, what character would you be and why? Isabel said, maybe martial arts girl. There you go.
We caught wind of this martial arts interest around Halloween. She very specifically wanted to be a ninja for Halloween, which I found very interesting.
But remember, she also wanted her bunny to have a headband
Yes.
because she wanted her bunny to be a ninja as well.
Yes. Yes.
And we found her a pretty dope outfit.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, pretty sweet outfit.
Yeah. Actually, that bunny is part of what landed Isabel here because we have a thing where, for some reason, like a lot of spirits that we are very, very, very drawn to have a bunny with their vessel.
Or some sort of like vessel with their vessel.
Yeah. And like I saw the bunny and I was like, oh man, I was like, it's another bunny. It's to the point where I was given my own bunny that Nicole picked out for my birthday. So I even have a bunny with my vessel,
It's true.
aka me. But
That's a cute bunny too.
yeah, so a bunch of us have bunnies. Christy and Omi have bunnies. Isabel's got bunny. I got bunnies. We got bunnies.
Okay, so moving on to the next thing. Next question is from Spider. They ask, are there any books you've currently... Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any books you're currently reading or want to read? I've been enjoying a book about Schoenhut dolls.
I don't know what that is.
Neither do I. And Isabel said, loving the ocean book.
We have like it's like a big book of everything related to the ocean. It's like a Smithsonian book that we bought at an aquarium that we went to.
It's a pretty cool
a
book.
lot of times, like, you know, our spirits, like if we go somewhere really cool, we'll like hit the gift shop and get offerings there. So it's like they get like a piece of the experience that we had, you know. And so we went to the aquarium and, you know, CL with his fish interest, and we got Iton is a water elemental, so we got a bunch of like ocean stuff, and this book was one of them. And it's this huge book of just like
different stuff about
everything you
fish
could
and
ever want
ocean,
to
yeah.
know about the ocean.
And it's cool
It's
because
really cool.
gift shops are notorious for having lots of little knickknack things.
Yeah, they're like perfect for offerings.
You know, keychains, books,
Yeah.
stuffed animals.
Also, airports very good for getting offerings.
Airports also very good for getting offerings.
We've gotten like little like American Airlines airplanes for spirits. We've gotten like
that
magnets.
American airplane, the little airplane, is so cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Weird offering tips, but there you go.
There you go. Next question is from Spider. Why do you break vessels when you leave them? Do you have to break them, or do you just enjoy doing that? And Isabel said, people buy one if it's broke. So I do it. There you go.
Why wouldn't you do it if the
Why
people
wouldn't you do it if
listen?
it works. I have 2 more questions. Next one is from Spider. They ask, have you ever played Jenga? Do you like it? You seem like someone who might. And Isabel said, yes. They fall down nice. Boom. Maybe we should play Jenga.
I think we need to buy Jenga.
Buy a Jenga set for that. Sounds like a crazy idea for the spirits to like set up a Jenga.
I would be
tower.
really interested to see if they could manipulate that or not.
Oh, 1,000%.
It would be really interesting.
That Jenga tower would never be standing in our house.
You know what? It's worth a shot though. I'm gonna look into Jenga after
Look at a
this.
Jenga tower. Last question is from
Girl, if
Spider.
she wants, you know?
They ask, have you made any good friends at Taylor and Mitch's place? If so, who? And Isabel said, Sylvia works fine.
Isabel has been described by other spirits as liking books a hell of a lot more than she likes people.
She's independent.
Yes.
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 There you go.
But Sylvia's fine.
Sylvia works great.
Which is so funny to me because Sylvia is like so different from
very
from
social,
Isabel,
very bubbly,
very loud, very in your
loud.
face, very like expressive, and like she's always laughing and just like totally different vibe. But I'm, opposites attract.
I do feel like it's as though it's kind of like a Christiomi situation though.
Yeah, that's true. They balance each other
one's
out.
a little bit more shy, more reserved, and one's like
Yeah.
boom in your face. And they do, opposites attract in that
Yeah,
sense for
absolutely.
sure. So I asked Isabella, do you have any final words? And she said, nope. Interesting. Bye-bye. Said, okay.
All right.
But that about wraps up the episode.
Yeah,
We
that
want to
does.
once again thank David Sloan for coming on, and thank you, Robert, for
allowing us to chat about you and tell your story.
And tell your story. I hope we did it some justice.
Yes, absolutely.
We are beyond excited to go visit. And we'll be, I'm assuming, releasing some footage for that.
Oh, a lot of footage from that. Yes.
Yes.
A lot of footage from that. Also, if you don't already know, he talks about it a little bit, but David Sloan is an author. He has written multiple books. There's the Robert book, but he's also written books about, the ghosts in Key West and Key West tourism and all of these really, really fascinating things. So I will put the link to his website with his books in the description down below. That is also where Isabel's backstory will be if you would like to learn more about her in particular. So definitely check out David's work because it's incredible. He is a wealth of knowledge and somebody that I think anybody in the paranormal field, regardless of where you are in your journey, could learn a lot from.
Yeah, and you can tell.
And I already, I've already learned so much from him. So highly recommend supporting everything he does. He is a force in the paranormal community, and I think the way that he goes about his work is with the utmost respect for spirits, and I think that is beautiful and what everybody should aim to do. Right. So if you would like to support him again, that will be down below. Stay tuned over the coming weeks for more Robert footage. This is kind of like your preview for what's to come. Our investigation with Robert, some of our other work that we're doing in Key West. And we hope you will join us along the way for that. So on that note, thank you guys for supporting us. Thank you for watching us. Getting to work with Robert is my number one forever dream in this field. He has always I've always been so drawn to him, even as a kid. And so this is definitely a dream come true. And that dream would not be possible or coming true if you guys out there were not supporting us along the way, cheering us on, and getting us to where we are. So thank you for that. I really, really appreciate you guys. So on that note, we will see you later. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.